Good evening. I'm Pragna, again back with a new topic, nationalism in Europe. So, this topic is again very important for your exam point of view because this is the most important topic of history of your social studies class today. So, let us consider this chapter has a story for a while. So, this story begins with the realization of people about the importance of a nation state, and then finally the conclusion would be acquiring a nation state. Finally getting a nation state through their struggles. So all those things are included in this lesson, nationalism in Europe. So this actually starts with the realization for the people. So I used a term called nation state over here. So what do you mean by a nation state? Let me not define it as a sentence because you might forget at times. So let me give three phrases that would best say about a nation state. That is common identity, shared history and struggle. Let me take our example, our India example, as example. So, we have struggled a lot. Let me start with this. We had a common identity. So, you and me and everyone here are Indians. That is our common identity. And then, shared history. We have the shared past. We have the same past. We were fighting against the British and we acquired freedom. So, that was a shared history that we have. And all those things are acquired through a struggle. So this is a good example. So you can conclude as a nation state which had common identity, shared history and struggle. So this is what you mean by a nation state. So now, this story of nationalism in Europe starts with the 19th century. That is 1800 to 1900. So this starts in 19th century that people realize the importance of a nation state. So you must be having a question. How was the government or how were they being ruled before this 19th century? That is by the multinational dynastic rules. So what do you mean by a dynasty? It is something that is a monarchical form of government where the kings and their successors rule the people. So because that kind of a rule was very horrible, they realized the importance of a nation state. So there should be some incident which has made them realize the importance of a nation state and have a common identity, collective identity among themselves. So what is that? It is nothing but the French Revolution. So I think you're already familiar with the term called French Revolution from your previous knowledge. You're already familiar with French Revolution, the struggles made by people in the year 1789 that has actually made them get a nation state. So this is a very good example. And this has made all the Europeans realize the importance of a nation state. So what are the measures taken in the French to actually make people of French realize the importance of a nation state? So let us see that. So in order to make them have a collective identity, so these were the measures taken. The first one is that fatherland, that is your patrie. So what do you mean by fatherland? So before this could be introduced in France, people were just assuming as France to be a piece of land in which they resided. They do not have that patriotic feeling among themselves. So through this phrase fatherland or your patrie, they realized that it is something a fatherland on which they are staying and they're all citizens on that fatherland. So they had a collective identity. And then they changed the flag. Because they were totally against the monarchical form of government and was supporting a nation state formation, they did not have the same flag. They did not want a flag that supported monarchy. So they had a new flag, a tricolor flag. And the next is the formation of National Assembly. So a National Assembly is definitely required to frame the constitution to form a nation state. So a National Assembly or a States General has been formed. Then, let me discuss this point a little later. Custom duties and due abolishment. So, custom duties was something that is within the country. Because they want to form a nation state, this were abolished. Custom duties and dues were abolished. And the next one is uniform weights and measures that were introduced. And regional dialects were discouraged. Regional dialects means that the customs and duties within that particular region. So, those were discouraged because they wanted a nation, not a region, to be united. So, and again, the next one was the common language. They need a common language among themselves because in each particular region, they have some own regional languages. So they don't want all those things. But as a whole for France, they need some national language. And the next one and most important one is that new hymns were composed and oaths were taken. So these hymns and oaths were taken so as to create a kind of collective identity and patriotism among themselves. So these were the measures taken by the revolutionaries of France in order to get a nation state. Now this has inspired many of Europeans. So how did this inspire Europeans? This all among within the France, all these things were happening within the France. How did this inspire Europeans who are away from this? So it was because of the army, soldiers. So soldiers, when they moved from France to different countries like Holland, Belgium, Italy, Switzerland, they took the ideas of this French Revolution so as the people of so as the other Europeans get inspired about this sense and get freedom and form a nation state among themselves. So this, the main intention of the French revolutionaries was that all over the Europe there should be the formation of nation states. They want people, the other Europeans, to get inspired with the steps taken in French Revolution. So now, through this, people were able to get a sense of national unity and they were able to form a nation state. Now let's see something about Napoleon and the Civil Code of 1804. So as you know, Napoleon has actually ruled France for a lot of time, and his ultimate goal was to actually capture the whole Europe and form a monarchical form of government. So he is a kind of partial hero and partial villain of France. Why do I say that? So he has helped a lot. He's a military leader. So when this kind of French Revolution was taking place, many of the monarchs of the other places were getting scared, afraid about the revolutions that were taking place in France, and a lot of attacks were made for France. So it was basically he who has saved France at that time. So he was like a hero. But then, after getting into the power, he has destroyed democracy totally in France. But let us see about the Civil Code of 1804 that Napoleon has introduced. This is one of the most important questions that could be asked for you. What is the Civil Code of 1804 or Napoleonic Code of 1804? This is also called as Napoleonic Code of 1804. So, this was basically administrative. As I said, I will discuss this point a little later. That is centralized administrative system. So, what are the changes that he made for the administrative system of France is they had common national currency. So, before this could be introduced, they used to have a lot of currencies in France itself. They used to have some 30 currencies in France itself. So, if there are many currencies, transactions and trading would be a little difficult for people. So, he made a common national currency.